This is the Business Storytelling Show with Christoph Trapp. Name a top 20 storytelling podcast and a top 5% podcast globally. Christoph chats with thought leaders and experts to share tips and tricks that can help you tell your company's stories better to drive business results. Available wherever you listen to podcasts, live streamed on major social media channels, and part of the DB&A television network, available on most U.S. television sets and streaming on Roku and Amazon Fire. Here's Christoph with today's episode. Let's go.
Hey, let's go, business storytellers. How's everyone doing? Episode 539, moving right along here. Now, the topic today is near and dear my heart because all of us content creators need help with our content, quite frankly, whether that includes proofreading or strategy or editing or, feedback from people that actually can offer feedback. We did have the show the other day about I'm not a copywriter, but you've probably all have heard that feedback. I don't know anything about anything, but I will give you my feedback. So what goes into proofreading? How do we think about it? What is proofreading to begin with, quite frankly? And how do we do that in a way that makes sense? On today's show, I'm joined by Brian Kallenberg. He's the president at Proofreading Pal LLC, which is based just south of me here in Iowa City, Iowa. Also excited to say Greg McLaughlin, a former Iowa football teammate. He was a kicker. I was a lineman. And he is one of the co-founders in the company, which is kind of how I ran across it. So let's get Brian on the show, find out what's all the fuss about proofreading. What is it? How do we do it? And, how do we find the right people to help us with it? Brian, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Christoph. Boom.
If you are listening on the audio channels, every time I go, we're fist bumping. So go over to Spotify and listen to us on there where you can see our smiling faces. Brian, hey, thanks for making the time. Really excited to chat with you today. So tell me about your interest in proofreading. Why is that an important topic to you? And what is proofreading? Give us a definition. We love definitions around here.
Well, so the way we kind of define proofreading here at Proofreading Pal is we define proofreading as proofreading includes proofreading for spelling, grammar, punctuation, and capitalization errors. So those are kind of the fundamentals of writing: spelling, grammar, punctuation, capitalization. Some people would also throw in formatting, consistency, and spacing. That's kind of what we at Proofreading Pal consider proofreading. Now at Proofreading Pal, we also do editing, and it's part of our combined service. And then the final piece of our combined service is commentary. But the editing side, what we call editing, is editing for sentence structure, clarity. That's word choice changes, removing repetition, and then helpful comments and suggestions or commentary is things that are outside the scope of what we can do as proofreaders and editors, more along the lines of content creation or things that we would consider maybe they should consider deleting, but it'd be a big delete. So we ask them to consider doing it instead of us just doing it for them. But proofreading is kind of the fundamental, you're a football guy. It's kind of like the offensive line. It's the spelling, grammar, punctuation, and capitalization. It doesn't matter how good the writing is. If you've got tons of errors in your document with spelling, grammar, punctuation, capitalization, no one's gonna take that writing very seriously.
Especially when it's stuff that people catch. And of course, we had the grammar girl, Mignon Fogarty, on the show. And I think we're all in agreement that you have to have the basic foundation of good content and error-free content. Now, but how did you get started in proofreading? Why is that why do you care about that topic? And your company's been around for about 12 years, so not many companies make it to 12 years. So congratulations for that, certainly. But how did you get started with that?
Well, so I guess I've always considered myself a decent writer, and I've also considered myself to have decent grammar skills. But really, the way I started Proofreading Pal, the reason I started Proofreading Pal was because when I graduated from Iowa State, I had already started a different business, and it was an online business. It was called GameRosters.com. And I know we're making some football analogies here, but you played football. Greg, the co-owner, played football, college football. Well, they used to make a game, and they're going to start making it again, but they stopped making it in 2013. It was called EA Sports NCAA Football. Um, and played that game. I don't know. Did you ever play that game, Christoph, in college?
No comment because I didn't play it my first year or first semester. Did really well in school, and that is, of course, is in the fall semester during football season. And then I rocked NCAA football
Okay.
my spring semester, and my grades just went downhill. But I won plenty of championships. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. But yeah, so long story short, I did play that game more than I.
Okay. I'm kind of that same boat. I played it too much in college. But there there were some services out there who would put all the players' names in for all the teams. This was back on the PS2 days, and it made playing the game way better. And the announcers would say the names; they'd show up on your plane. It just made the game way better. And these services were just letting people download these roster files from their website for free. It took some technical savvy to be able to figure out how to do it to actually download it. And so I decided, I think a lot of people would just like to have this on a memory card, or have some customer support that would help them through the download process. So I started GameRosters.com. We provided the roster file for NCAA football. First year was 2005, and really kind of built up a little niche monopoly in the first 4 or 5 years. Bought out all the competitors that really competed against me, and had kind of a pretty much cornered the market for this little niche product. But it was what I did right out of college, and it grew pretty well. We were doing six-figure revenue, second year out of college, and that was 20 years ago almost now. Well, not quite, but about 15, 20 years ago. And so I learned a lot about the internet, and internet marketing, website design, just all facets of running an online company. I had built that skill set, but it was kind of risky. There was more talk about them not making the game anymore. Uh, there was these concerns with player likeness and things like that, and eventually in 2013, 2014, EA Sports quit making that game. So they hadn't made it for the last 8 years now. And so kind of when I started to get nervous about that, this was my only source of income really. I also did some consulting for others on the side. I was trying to think of another business preferably that could be sold online, that could be scalable. That could, you could sell anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. I was looking for an e-commerce idea. And at the time, my wife was getting her master's degree in St. Louis, and I was working with some overseas web developers through what's now called Upwork. It used to be called Odesk. And she was writing her thesis for her master's and decided, I need to have someone proofread this. And so I'm like, oh well, I can probably just go on Upwork and find someone to proofread it. Found some professor down in Tennessee who did proofreading. And then the idea just kind of hit me, proofreading. That's something that can be sold worldwide. And I was looking for a bigger industry, something that wasn't so seasonal, something that was more secure and sound. And so did a little research, found some companies out there that were already doing proofreading and editing online. So Proofreading Pal is certainly not the pioneer. I don't want to mention these companies over the air just because it'd be free advertising for them, but we found some, kind of looked at how they were going about doing the service, their model. And then I hired someone who worked for one of them, as a contractor, and kind of brought her on as my consultant because I didn't know anything about the proofreading editing industry. She really helped me through the process, built a test for us to use to hire prospective contract proofreaders, convinced me to use the two proofreader model, which is one thing that Proofreading Pal is still pretty unique to this day, is we have 2 proofreaders go over every document, not just one. And that's not only been a benefit for just providing higher quality, just 2 sets of eyes are better than one. There's less chance an error is going to slip through the cracks, but also for scaling. We're able to hire new proofreaders. We have a pretty rigorous recruiting and testing process. It's really hard to become a proofreader here. But then even when they start, everyone starts out as a first proofreader. And so we're not having a brand new person go over a document and then that was the only set of eyes on it and it goes back to the customer. We've got senior second proofreaders that go over the document again to make sure the document's up to quality before that goes back to the customer. And so the consultant lady really helped me. Her name was Jody. And yeah, so we launched May of 2010. And a couple other things we really wanted to try to build core competencies in right as quick as possible was fast turnaround. And that's another area that we're pretty unique in is we now do 30 to 60-minute turnarounds for real short docs if you need those. And that's Monday through Friday, I believe, 7 a.m. or that's 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. But then all other turnaround speeds, we offer a 90-minute, a 3-hour, a 6-hour, a 10-hour, and then so on. We offer those 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Well, I mean, that's certainly something a lot of us, we can't wait for weeks at a time to have something proofread. Now, when the Grammar Girl was on, we talked about the actual mistake in content, right, in writing, and just something that what she called usage, right? So it's debatable whether or not that's wrong. But from a usage perspective, you really want to use this one way and not this other way, even though technically you could make a case it's not 100% incorrect necessarily. How does your team deal with that? How do they figure out when to make a recommendation to change something and when not to? I mean, like when I'm using software, it says you might want to consider changing this because some people will object to it, right? That's not a mistake, but from a usage perspective, people might have a problem with it.
sure. So we encourage our proofreaders to be relatively aggressive with their editing. Because 90% of our customer base would rather us just make the edit for them instead of leaving a comment about consider doing it. A lot of times they might not have the skill set to consider. A decent percentage of our customer base is English as a second language. So overall, we want our editors to be aggressive making the edit. So if it's a usage thing that everyone knows, technically the way you had it isn't incorrect, but it's better to do it this way, then we'll make that change most of the time. Um, the only time we really want to leave comments or suggestions or for situations that are like content creation, we can't write a brand new sentence or a brand new paragraph for you, or major deletions to the document, or situations where we're not sure if we make that edit, it's going to still retain the customer's intended meaning. So one thing we also want to make sure when we're making edits to documents that the edit we're making, we want to be 100% confident that is still retaining the customer's intended meaning. If it's not, then we opt to leave a comment saying, do you mean this? Then consider this.
Interesting. And when Sarah, don't remember her last name now, for some reason, the Australian content marketer was on the show. She talked about that many corporate content creators don't have anybody edit. Forget about proofreading their content. Crazy, right? How that happens and how dangerous that actually can be. So it's great to hear that you recommend or you do operationalize 2 eyes on the content. Now, when you talk about, I read a piece of content one time, and I want to say it was for a job interview, or it was for some kind of test. And when I read it, I went in there with the mindset, I just have to do some slide editing, proofreading, and that's kind of how I went in there. And then I started, when I was at the end, I was like, oh my God, this doesn't need any proofreading or anything. This needs a complete trashing, update, it has rewriting. I mean, it was horrible, right? It was totally like the structure wasn't there, the story wasn't there. Forget about accuracy. How do your teams deal with that when they're hired to proofread and they realize this needs a lot more work than just fixing a few things?
Sure. So our our goal at Proofreading Pal is always the non-negotiable objective part of our service, regardless of the quality of the document. Our expectation is for our proofreaders to handle these areas. The objective part of our service is proofreading for spelling, grammar, punctuation, and capitalization errors. It's also the objective non-negotiable part of our service is ensuring formatting consistency throughout the document. And then the last piece of our service is non-negotiable objective is making sure if they select AP style or Chicago style or APA style, whatever writing style they've selected, making sure their document adheres to the rules and requirements of that style. So that's kind of the objective part of our service. Then the subjective, more gray area part of our service, it's gonna fluctuate a little bit depending on the quality of the document we've received, is the editing for sentence structure clarity, the rewriting, the amount of rewriting we're able to do, the amount of word choice and other content changes, and then I'd say the quality and depth of helpful comments and suggestions that we leave. Our goal, if the document, whether it's an academic related document or not, if it's a resume, a business report, or
Mhm.
or a research paper, our goal at Proofreading Pal is to raise the quality of that document by 1.5 to 2 letter grades. So if someone's producing an F quality document, we're not going to turn it into an A. We're not a rewriting service that also be bordering along academic dishonesty, especially if it's an academic document. But we would certainly fix all the fundamentals of that document, and we would do some editing and some helpful comments and suggestions. But an F quality is probably not going to turn into an A at Proofreading Pal, but a C or a C plus, those are the types of documents that we're able to turn into an A, and a D, we're probably turning a D into a B.
Well, and I mean, an F to turn an F into an A, that's going to take a little bit more work than just making a few changes, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that need help. But I was going to, mention, you talked about leaving a comment versus just making the change. Drives me crazy when some editors, they leave lengthy comments about making a relatively minor change. Now, some things do need comments, right? Like if you don't understand something or you have a question, and that's fine. But if you have to change something that's relatively non-negotiable, right? Just because that's the rule and you got it wrong when you wrote it, just change it. Don't have a congressional hearing about it. Now, you mentioned most of your or many of your customers are English as a second language learners. How about corporate content strategists, corporate content teams? I know there's some that have everything in house, but certainly there's many content teams that are relatively small, so they can use the help. Do you work with them, or do you focus mostly? I mean, you do focus on business proofreading. I see at proofreadingpal.com. That's the website. So can those teams work with you as well, or how does that look?
I just lost you there. Are you there?
Just lost you there for a second. I don't know if you heard me, but basically the question is, how about corporate
Okay.
content
Yeah.
people? Can they
Yep.
work with you?
Yeah, we actually work with lots and lots of corporate content, a lot of advertising agencies. We work with communications departments of major universities. We work with some law firms, but I would say probably our biggest, some of our best customers, month in and month out, are advertising agencies, and we have some abilities to adapt to their unique needs too. We have corporate accounts, and then we also have a dedicated team service that some of these corporate accounts, they have very specific style guides they need us to follow. Um, certain ways they want things done, and so we're able to kind of customize our service to meet their unique needs for certain higher volume customers.
Very, very interesting. Now, when people, do you also look for proofreaders? Like, I mean, do I remember that correctly? Business on your website, proofreadingpal.com, you do have a sign up for people who want to work with you, or do I
Y-
remember that wrong?
Yeah, we do. It's if anyone goes to proofreadingpal.com, over on the right side there is a customer service drop down, and then there's career opportunities. And we have an application there that you fill out, and then we have a pretty extensive testing process, recruiting and testing process. Only about 8 to 9% of people who apply uh, score high enough on our test to be considered. And then of that 8 to 9%, about half of them have to start out in what we call training, and about half of them can come on and start as a paid contractor right out of the gates.
Interesting. So there is a process. Not everybody can get in just because they would like to. Now, make the case here for me on the future of using a service like yours. And I'm thinking about, um, yes, I 100% see the advantage to having a person editor, a person proofreader, who have done this for a long time. But I also use a lot of technology. I use Grammarly. I use Yoast SEO. I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, unless I get all the green buttons on my article, it's not publishing. That's not proofreading my content, but it's measuring it against practices for SEO, right? Um,
Mhm.
but talk about the human aspect. Why is it important to actually have the two rounds of human proofreaders or edits?
Well, so first of all, that's good that you're using the technology available. Microsoft Word, their original spell check, and the tools in Microsoft Word are good to use to pick up some of that low hanging fruit errors that you might have missed. Grammarly is good too. Um, but those services just simply do not pick up on little nuances that human editors are able to help with. Those services are still going to miss some errors too, but also just the rewording, rewriting, how you say things, little things. Those services, they're not even close to comparing to what humans can do. Um, and just myself, I send a lot of my any e-newsletter that's going to go out to our customers, other things I've sent through Proofreading Pal. I feel like it's been, I've written it pretty well. I've done spell check, I've sent it through Grammarly. There's no errors. Send it through well, at least I think there's no errors. Send it through Proofreading Pal to editors. It's amazing. They'll still catch a few errors that I missed, but just the way they might rephrase things, some other suggestions that they give to me, the document just reads so much more crisp and clean after it goes through Proofreading Pal. So that's my own personal experience, and we've worked with 19,000 plus customers now. Large percentage of those are repeat customers, and I think they kind of feel the same way. I think it's certainly smart to use Grammarly, Word, and Words spell check, but it's not the same level of expertise.
Yeah, no argument there. And good for me, I have not used Microsoft Word in a long time. Write all my content either online or directly in the WordPress CMS. So, but totally hear you. And sometimes Grammarly makes suggestions, and I'm like, I don't know what you guys were thinking, but that's nowhere close to correct. And certainly it catches some things like commas and those kind of things.
Well,
Um,
and speaking of that, we encourage our proofreaders to run their when they're doing their editing. We encourage them to run it through Grammarly. Just it helps you catch some of the low hanging fruit. The problem is sometimes they don't, because they get tired of all the things that Grammarly flags that's not wrong. And so that is a problem with Grammarly, is it sometimes can kind of slow you down a little bit because it's bringing things to your attention that there's nothing wrong with it.
So sometimes I ask my wife to read something for me, and very rarely anymore, but I used to, Was that the case when your wife was working on her paper? She wanted you to proofread it, and you said, "No way, I'm not proofreading it. I'm starting a new company that's going to be successful for 12 years." Is that what happened? Is that the full story or no?
No, because I'm not a proofreader and editor. We're approaching 140,000 documents proofread and edited at Proofreading Pal. I haven't proofread or edited one of them.
Yeah.
So she wasn't wanting me to proofread and edit her thesis. Was wanting me to find someone who could.
Very good, very good. And you know what? I think sometimes people do underestimate how much skill is actually involved in anything, really. You know, whether it's proofreading or editing or content creation or podcast production or launching a company. I mean, all these things take skill. So, proofreadingpaul.com. Check it out, everyone. Send your documents and content to them. Give it a try. Brian, it was great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Christoph. It was a pleasure.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review our show on your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to share this episode with your networks. We appreciate you. Until next time, let the best stories win.